This is the most unhinged comic book line that I've ever read in 30 years of reading comics, and it's incredible. So this is a comic series called Ice Cream Man, but the beautiful thing about this is every single comic in this entire comic line is standalone. They're all one-shots. The only thing that really unites them is the character of the Ice Cream Man, who just shows up in a variety of ways and in different capacities throughout each and every story. So in this video, we're gonna cover issue number 1, and this picks up with the Ice Cream Man giving ice cream out to little kids, as you do in neighborhoods. And at the outset, it seems ordinary enough, right? Just the sun setting on this beautiful, quaint suburban town, and the Ice Cream Man's playing his music. There's a line of kids who are waiting to buy some ice cream from him, and one of the girls says her name is Sharon and that kind of thing. But then this kid shows up and the Ice Cream Man asks, who do we have next? And he just says, hi. And so he asks, where are your mom and dad, kid? And the kid just says, I'm a big boy. So the Ice Cream Man's just like a man of self-possession, right? I can certainly appreciate that. What'll it be then, Mr. Big and Tall? And he says, chocolate, 2 scoops. And so the Ice Cream Man just says, lickety split, fast as fast can be. You get home safe. Okay. And so then you pick up with this kid as he's heading back. And this is where the insanity comes in, because we're told the Brazilian wandering spider is one of the most dangerous, deadly spiders recognized by the World Spider Catalog. The genus name Phaunatria is from the Greek word that I can't pronounce, meaning murderous. In fact, in 2010, the Guinness Book of World Records granted this charming arachnid an official true blue title: world's most venomous spider. This awesome distinction can be credited to a concentrated neurotoxin that the spider releases when it bites, which in high doses induces all manner of unpleasantness, including, but not limited to, loss of muscle control, strange contortions, painful inflammation, crippling instant paralysis, and in some cases, priapism. Basically, an absolutely lethal and unprovoked, never-ending erection. But the crazy thing about this kid's heading home as we're getting this whole explanation of the spider, just walking home, eating his ice cream. All that's left is the cone. He tosses the cone to the side. And once he gets to the house, he plugs his nose and he opens the door. And once he gets inside, he just says, hi, Rupert, right? This little pet spider that he has. And he just says, I'm home, right? Greeting it like a friend or a member of the family. And he just calls out, Mom, Dad, right? I'm home. And he says, they've been so quiet lately, Rupe. It's like they live in the kitchen. But am I ever hungry? And when he gets inside, his parents are dead. And in fact, they've literally rotted, right? I mean, they're decomposing. That's how long they've been in here. Now, we don't know exactly how long that is, but they've been in here for quite some time. And so at that point, you jump to the other side of town and you pick up with the police station, and we're introduced to these 2 cops, right? This is Detective Gelio Juan. Her colleagues call her 5V in reference to the fact that her first name, Chinese for most beautiful willow, contains all 5 vowels of the English alphabet, which is actually kind of a cool nickname to have based on that. For the sake of expedience, let's just say this: like most people in their 30s, she's got a job for which she can summon only a minimum amount of passion or interest, but she does it day in and day out. What else is there to do? And so there's this old woman who's talking to 5V and a sketch artist, right? And she's just kind of flipping out, right? Are you listening to me? You people need to do something, right? And so that's where 5V just asked Tony, the sketch artist, what do we have? And he's like, okay, as Miss Chester here colorfully describes it, this is our suspect. And he holds up this picture of this crazy looking cat person type thing, right? And that's where Miss Chester says, that's him, right? The thingamacritter from the woods. He ate Mr. Buttersworth. And that's where Tony's like, who? Right? And she was like, Padfoot Buttersworth, my cat, right? I mean, just look at him. He sucked the skin right off his bones. And she has the cat, literally pulls the cat's body out of her purse and just holds it up. And Tony's just like, Jesus almighty, you carry that thing around with you? And so 5V just shoos this old lady out of the room, right? Because, I mean, she shows up with the corpse of a cat in her purse, ranting about how some creature in the woods basically killed it. It seems crazy, right? And so they're like, all right, this old woman's baddie, right? This cat lady, whatever, they dismiss it. And so at that moment, her and her partner Briggs are called in to their boss's office, right? And he presents them 2 pictures. right? Tom and Henrietta McAllister both reported MIA by their respective employers about 10 days ago. No vacation requests, no PTO filed. They just stopped coming into work one day. And so I need you guys to make a house call, because this is just a classic good old fashioned missing persons report. That's really all it is. And so they ask the question, like, what do you think it is, right? Tax evasion or heroin or something like that. They make reference to the drug use because one of the stories we can't cover because YouTube will literally demonetize it. I don't know, maybe I'll risk it, but it's basically like Requiem for a Dream. It's really how dark that story is. And if you've never seen Requiem for a Dream, thank your lucky stars, because that movie is like, it is so messed up. But the fact is, the statement's made. My money is on Tom and Henrietta parasailing down in Mexico, ducking the IRS and laughing at us all. And that's what their boss just says. Like, I have no clue what in the hell's going on with them. Like, maybe they're dead for all we know. And the cherry on the sundae of it all, they have a kid, right? So like, we need to look into this, because it's one thing to have a couple that goes missing. It's another to have a couple that goes missing with a kid left behind, because that opens a whole new can of worms. And so that's when you pick up with this kid as he's making his way through the woods, just kind of whistling and singing to himself. And that's kind of the craziness behind it, is we don't actually learn his name in the story. This kid's just kind of here. And so as he's going through the woods, the ice cream man just appears out of nowhere, just all ragtag, his clothes torn, the whole 9 yards. And it's just like, that was unpleasant. And this little kid is like, you're the ice cream man, right? And that's where he's like, you know, it looks like I am. And he's like, what do you got there? And he just says, oh, it's a stick, right? Because this little kid's holding up a stick. And the ice cream man just says, you want to see something neat, right? Snaps his fingers and the stick turns into ice cream. And he's like, chocolate, 2 scoops, lickety split, just like that. And the kid's like, wow, right? So clearly this dude has something going on, right? Like, there's something sus about this ice cream man guy. And he says, you know, kid, you shouldn't be walking around these woods on your own. It's not safe here. It's time for you to go home to your parents, don't you think? And the kid's just kind of like, crud, right? Because like, he has to go back to the house. Now, here's a crazy thing, right? And this is where you kind of get into the darker element of it, right? Which is to say, this comic has literally caused existential crises in people who have read it. So we get this monologue where it says, here's a secret about life, which I will tell you for free. We are all being devoured by bugs, slowly but surely. Our little internal insects, boredom, loneliness, regret, etc. They're all eating us whole, nibbling away from the inside out. The process only lasts as long as you are alive. And that's where 5V is writing with her partner, and he just like pipes up and it's like, I've got cockroaches crawling all over my brain and they're telling me to cheat on my wife. And she just looks at him like, what? And he's like, I asked, did you read that memo about the changes to our pensions, right? It's a bunch of bullshit. And so like, did he actually say that is the question that we're kind of left with here. And so 5V is just kind of like, no, I didn't really get a chance to read, you know, the pension. Like, is that the place? Right? She just like sees the house. She's like, is that the place over there? And her partner's just like, yep, Chateau McAllister. And so once they start to get out, he literally calls out to her and says, look, I know this isn't really your thing, but Jill and I are throwing a little party for Sean this Saturday. So like, you're always saying that you have to get out more. So, you know, I mean, this is a chance for you to do that. But she doesn't really acknowledge him. She just says, the door's open, right? And when they get inside, she calls out, right? Hello, Mr. and Mrs. McAllister. And they look around, they're like, what a pigsty, right? This place is literally a total pigsty. And so the TV's still on, but the ice cream man's commercial is on, right? So find my truck, get yourself a treat from butterscotch to bubblegum, sour balls and cherry blasters and lickety splits. Something sweet for everyone. Something sweet for the bugs to eat. And that's when Briggs gets into the kitchen and finds the bodies of the parents. And it's like, what in the hell happened to these guys, right? Like, my God. And that's where 5V is like, dude, the smell, like, how long have they been like this? How long have they been here? And Briggs just says, like, I don't really know what I'm looking at here. Like, should we call someone? Because normally when cops show up to a scene and someone's dead, it usually like just happened, right? It's a murder that just took place or something along those lines. But these folks have been worm food for quite some time. The problem is that in the midst of this, Briggs gets bitten. And then immediately he's like, oh my God, it's a spider, right? Like, what in the hell? And then he just starts foaming at the mouth. Within seconds, he collapses to the ground. And that's where the kid shows up and is like, it's not Rupert's fault, right? He just doesn't really like adults. And so 5E has no clue what's going on. She's like, kid, I don't know what's going on here, but we need to get my friend some help as humanly possible. He's incredibly sick. And the kid just says, my parents got sick too, right? They just got all stiff up and then missed Macaroni Tuesday. And so 5E looking at this kid is like, okay, we'll figure all this out, right? I just need you to put down the spider. But he goes to reach for the door and shouts like, no, right? You're not taking him away from me, and like runs out of the house. Right? And so like 5E goes chasing after him. The kid goes running into the woods. And so as she's chasing him, suddenly the kid calls out for help. And when he gets out there into a bit of a clearing, there's essentially the ice cream man who's more or less a werewolf, right? And 5E is just like, put the kid down, right? And like the ice cream man just like throws the kid at 5E, sends them both crashing to the ground, and then starts to go after her. But then the spider, being on the ice cream man's back, bites him. And in that moment, the ice cream man grabs the spider, throws him, but then just starts foaming at the mouth the same way Briggs did, seemingly succumbing to like the influence of the spider, right? And so like the werewolf takes off and 5E is just there with the kid. And it's like, what's your name? And he just says, Byron. And her response, you, Byron. And so at that point, you pick up with like all these emergency services that have showed up and they're carting the bodies away and the whole 9 yards. And that's where the beat cop, right, just says, like, he's been raising himself for almost 2 weeks by the looks of it. A diet of cookies and ice cream. We've got official cause of death from the parents as well as Briggs, and it just comes down to a spider bite. And so the question that 5E asks is like, what's going to happen to the kid? And the response, my guess, the kid's going to end up in a foster home. And they say, but I don't think there's any amount of therapy that's going to fix this kid, because understand, right? Like his emotional disconnect, right? Like just walking into a house with his parents' corpses, being sad about the fact that they missed Macaroni Tuesday, but not really connecting the dots that like his parents are dead. Like this kid is showing every indication of psychopathy and sociopathy, antisocial personality disorder, right? Just like a disconnect, right? Maybe he's just experiencing some kind of shock, like who knows? But whatever it is, this kid's screwed up in the head now, right? And so that's where 5E asked the beat cop, right? Like, did you guys ever get that spider bagged? Right? I want to take that back to the lab and see what's going on with it. And the response to the cop, like, no, didn't anybody tell you? Right? That spider's MIA. And so in that moment, the spider's literally roaming around the neighborhood, past like kids who are playing in the front yard. There's a husband who's just verbally abusing his wife. And the ice cream man looks down and sees it and just says, hello there, little buggy, picks it up, snaps his fingers and turns it into ice cream. And then just literally points it at us and just says, lickety split. But while we're here, let's just go for part 2. Let's just do issue number 2. So this is the Requiem for a Dream one. And this one is really, really sad, but really beautiful at the same time, especially by the time you get to the end. So this whole thing is almost exclusively done as a backstory, with the exception of once we get towards the end, right? So it picks up with a letter and she says, Dear Jimbo, my sweet, nice Jim, I know you've been sick. You've been dope sick, laid up all shivers and gagging. And God, if it doesn't just break my heart in 3 ways, seeing you like this. I got you the cold compress like you asked, just like you requested, but it doesn't work even a little. And ever it's hard to watch you suffer. I just can't stand it. We need more medicine, but you're too sick to cop with me. And anyway, we're out of cash. We got maybe $30 between us. That's all. And so she says, remember when we were 2 young lovebirds, just like 2 finches or whatever they are, in love, so much love, and we were king and queen of everything and then some. We met, if you recall, at Bobby G's club. There was music and lights and shiny, happy people dancing. And you came right up to me and you said, you have a dead bug in your hair. And I smiled and I replied and I said, well, if you're gonna get all romantic on me. And she's like, right after that, we were in love. Like we were just locked in and we were steady from then to now. And never were 2 broken people so put back together. Humpty Dumpty on the wall is one way you could describe it with words from stories. We'd walk through the park and do key bumps on the bench. And sometimes you'd slip a hand up my skirt behind a sycamore or an oak tree. I don't really know anything about trees. Those were the days, weren't they? And she says, and then in the spring, we tried some pretty hard stuff. The smells of the season, the colorful birds, and the air, you could taste the sunlight and know the world was good and there were good people in it. You could just taste that, couldn't you? And then, I don't know, it gets fuzzy. Time passes and you lose track. And their lives literally fell apart, like that. Like it all just goes to shit so quickly because they effectively just become addicts, right? She says, we robbed that poor old lady with the oxygen tank and we got $200 for it. And I felt so bad, but you assured me, you told me everything would be okay. You would be the one to carry all that weight on your shoulders, which just made it easy to keep going. And we did. We kept on and we did a bad thing to get a good thing. They became so addicted so quickly. And she says, until eventually it all squished together, blurry and the same, and there was no difference between right or wrong. But then she says, last week you got sick and now here I am, and I will be the one to carry that guilt for us. I'll be the one to carry the weight, right? And she reassures herself, a bad thing for a good thing. One more time, and then we'll get clean like we always talked about and move to Arizona where it's sunny and bright. And so she says, you rest up there, Jim, and I'll be back, hell or high waters, with a fix for both of us. I promise. I cross my heart. And so at that point, you switch to a few miles away, just like we did before in the first story. And you've got an older couple here, right? An older black guy, an older white guy. And for the most part, they're married. At least that seems to be the case. And he's just talking about how like his body's falling apart and how as time goes by that he kind of loses control of his functions and he's got to go see the doctor and different things like that. Just the struggles of age, all the medicine that he's taking and how they've got him on the slab, did surgery on him and so on and so forth. But his wife kind of slaves over everything for him. She's the one that makes sure that he takes his medicine. She's the one that makes sure that he gets to the doctor. She's dedicated, if there ever was a dedicated wife. And so in the midst of all this, she was making soup for him, right? And when she gives him the soup, he takes a spoonful of it, then he looks back at her and just says, the soup, Alice, it's cold. And that's when you jump back to what's essentially this junkie, right? Trying to get a high for her and her man. And she literally sees the truck of the ice cream man and steals it, goes racing through town. But notice how she phrases this. Dear Jimbo, my sick and suffering Jim, I found a colorful truck. The inside smells like summer. It drives really good. And there's nobody on the road, not a soul, not one single person. I'm on my way to who knows where, maybe a bank. I never robbed anything that big before, maybe an ATM, or maybe I'll find some guy with a fat wallet. And where she thinks there's no cars on the road, there's cars everywhere. She has such a terrible case of tunnel vision and such a fix, she can't see anything else. But she says, this last hit, Jim, it'll be one last hit before we finally get clean, just like we always talked about. We'll move to the desert where it's warm and dry and they have lizards the size of dogs. Arizona, just like we see in the brochure. Arizona, like in the movies of our dreams. We will get there. The problem is, as she's tearing down this road with no clue where she's going, Alice and Phil, the old couple, come walking out of the house so she can take him to his apartment. And what happens? This drug-addled girl just comes crashing into the vehicle. Phil ends up dying in the car crash. And Alice just standing over him is just like, oh my God, right? Wake up, Phil, right? Somebody call an ambulance. And this girl just comes staggering out of the vehicle. Money. Right, give me your money. And at that point, Alice is like, what are you talking about? Like, you're one of those junkies. Like, immediately recognizes this girl for what she is. Like, you're one of those junkies, right? And the whole time, this girl's just standing there with a handgun, right? Give me your money. And that's where Alice tells her, do you hear those sirens, right? That's the police coming. They're gonna come for you and they're gonna lock your junkie ass up for murder. And the whole time, this girl's just like, shut your mouth up and give me your money. The whole time, Alice keeps screaming at her about being a junkie. And so this girl, in a state of panic, pulls the trigger and kills Alice on the spot. And so she goes running back to the house. And when she gets there, the ice cream man's standing there. And he says, hi, Karen, right? It looks like Jim isn't looking so hot. And so her first question is like, who are you and why are you here? And he just says, you borrowed my truck, right? And he says, but don't worry about it. I've got plenty of those things. You're probably wondering what I'm doing here and how I got here, etc., all that kind of stuff. Well, that's assuming, of course, that this stuff, right, waving his hand at the table and everything on it, hasn't completely erased your ability to think critically. I never really quite understood the appeal at the end of the day, but he says, I am here, Karen, to offer you a treat, a little something for your sweet tooth, the best you've ever had, purer than pure. He literally holds it up in front of her face and just says, it makes this other stuff seem like microwave dinners, but here's the rub. There's only enough for one person, I'm afraid. You, the recent and harried fugitive, or poor Jimbo here, writhing on the couch in withdrawal, a real humdinger, right? You better choose quick because those sirens are getting awful close. And so what you do is you pick up a little bit later when you actually have 5V and her boss, right? Again, loose knit stories. They're here investigating the whole scene. And they just say, we found them like this, right? 2 overdoses, the driver who fled the scene and an unidentified white male, likely her boyfriend. Crash suspect is unresponsive, but the male has a pulse. And so that's where they're like, okay, another couple of junkies. So they end up giving Narcan to Jimbo, which is what's used to treat overdoses, usually in an emergency, like on the spot. And this guy snaps out of it and is like, what happened to Karen? Right? And that's where he's told, I'm sorry, like there was nothing we could do. Your girlfriend took a lethal dose. I'm afraid she didn't make it. And so that's where you get this letter again. And it says, Dear Jimbo, my precious and perfect gem, up here in heaven is the highest you can get. And the birds sing songs that sound like how ice cream tastes. Or maybe it's that the ice cream tastes like how robins do their chirping. And so she says, Jimbo, we did wrong in life, but I know a secret. Do you want to hear my secret? Up in the cloud place, all is forgiven. Even if you've done bad things after bad things, everyone ends on a good thing. Everyone gets to go to Arizona where the cactuses are green and prickly, but the bugs are actually just little smiley angels. I hope you're feeling better and beating the hunger. And that's where you find out that Jim has actually turned his life around. That's the beauty of it, right? Literally, she sacrificed herself for him, right? She sacrificed herself for him. It's crazy because she could take it all and that would be it, right? Cops showed up, they administered Narcan, and Jim, in seeing what happened to her and seeing that she's dead and the fact that he's lost everything, turns around and sorts himself out, right? He's in detox and deload. He stands up and admits to the group that he's in, hi, my name's Jim, I'm an addict, which if you talk to anybody who has a history of any kind of addiction whatsoever, they'll tell you that's the hardest part. The hardest part is actually standing up and having the courage to admit that's where you are. And that's why I say the story is beautiful. Like the story's incredible. It's gorgeous, right? It ends on a very, very beautiful note, despite being a very sad one. But the letter continues on, right? She says, I know it's hard, so hard, but hard is important. And hard is what makes you thankful for all the nice and good things, like the love we had for a small time, or the sun on a day that's warm, or a breeze when the sun gets too much. Do you feel the breeze, Jimbo? The one right there at the back of your neck? That's me, whistling Arizona at you from up above. Be good and well, baby doll. I hope I don't see you too soon. Yeah, it's tragic, man, but I told you guys, this comic book line is incredible. Ice Cream Man is phenomenal. It's like my new favorite comic book line right now. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.